The geopolitical dispute between Greenland and the United States has rapidly evolved into one of the most contentious international issues of early 2026, drawing global attention, sparking protests, and raising serious questions about sovereignty, national identity, and the future of transatlantic alliances. What began as a provocative idea in U.S. political rhetoric has now become a full-blown diplomatic confrontation involving NATO allies, European nations, international institutions, and most importantly, the people of Greenland themselves. For decades, Greenland has held a unique strategic place in global geopolitics. Lying deep within the Arctic Circle, this vast island's location gives it enormous military and economic value. During World War II and the subsequent Cold War, the United States established military cooperation in Greenland to guard against potential threats from hostile powers, and this relationship has continued under NATO auspices. Despite being part of the Kingdom of Denmark, Greenland exercises significant autonomy, especially in domestic affairs, while defense and foreign policy remain mostly under Danish guidance. But all of this changed dramatically in the past year, particularly under the administration of U.S. President Donald Trump. Trump renewed and amplified a long-standing idea that the United States should acquire Greenland, a notion first floated informally by U.S. leaders over half a century ago, but never seriously pursued through official policy. In early 2025, Trump made headlines by publicly stating his intention to secure control of the island, claiming it was necessary for U.S. national security and his vision of American global strength. Initially dismissed by many as rhetorical grandstanding, this position gained traction and grew more explicit throughout late 2025 and into January 2026. Some elements within the U.S. administration have articulated this interest in stark geopolitical terms. Officials have argued that Greenland's strategic position is critical for controlling Arctic sea lanes, for monitoring potential adversaries, and for accessing rare earth minerals essential to modern technology and defense industries. They have warned that if the United States does not assert control, rival powers like China or Russia might gain a foothold. This narrative, however, has been met with significant skepticism and resistance from many corners of the international community. What escalated tensions to an unprecedented level was not simply diplomatic pressure, but economic coercion. In early January 2026, after European NATO allies, including Denmark, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom, deployed troops to Greenland for a joint exercise known as Operation Arctic Endurance to demonstrate commitment to collective defense, the U.S. responded with a series of tariff threats. President Trump announced plans to impose steep tariffs on imports from multiple European countries unless Greenland was transferred to U.S. control. In essence, tying trade cooperation to territorial acquisition. European leaders reacted with sharp condemnation. They rejected the idea that sovereign territory could be bargained or coerced away through economic pressure. French President Emmanuel Macron called the tariff threats unacceptable, emphasizing respect for national sovereignty and democratic principles. Other European representatives stressed that any attempt to use tariffs as leverage not only undermined long-standing alliances, but also risked broader economic fallout and a dangerous spiral in transatlantic relations. Within the United States, reaction to the Greenland strategy has been deeply divided. Some members of Congress have openly challenged the president's approach, labeling the tariff threats and discussions of territorial acquisition as damaging to NATO and the U.S.'s reputation abroad. Opponents argue that coercive tactics weaken trust between allies and could set a dangerous precedent for international diplomacy. Meanwhile, a segment of Republican lawmakers continues to defend the argument based on strategic necessity. Though even within the party, there is a broad range of views on the legitimacy and wisdom of such a bold move. But perhaps the most fervent and immediate response has come from Greenland itself. Greenland's government and political leaders have responded with unequivocal rejection. Officials have described the idea of the United States taking over their land as unfathomable and completely unacceptable under any circumstance. They have emphasized that Greenlanders deserve to determine their own future, whether that be continued autonomy within the Kingdom of Denmark, independent statehood, or any other path they choose. The people of Greenland have also taken to the streets in significant protests. In the capital city of Nuuk, thousands marched with banners reading, "Greenland is not for sale, and we do not want to be Americans," underscoring the depth of public sentiment against outside control. These rallies represent more than opposition to U.S. policy. They symbolize a broader assertion of Greenlandic identity, cultural pride, and political agency in the face of perceived external domination. This crisis has triggered parallel debates about NATO's future. Traditionally viewed as a military alliance rooted in collective defense and cooperation, NATO now faces internal fractures as a result of these tensions. Some analysts warn that economic blackmail and threats against allies risk undermining the very foundations of the alliance. Others argue that the current situation demonstrates a deeper geopolitical realignment, where traditional partnerships are being reevaluated amid rising global competition and shifting power dynamics. Denmark, Greenland's sovereign authority under international law, has been unequivocal in defending the island's status. Danish leaders have reiterated that Greenland is not for sale, stressing that any decisions about its future must respect international law, self-determination, and the consent of its people. Danish officials have said they are prepared to defend these principles wherever necessary, including within international forums and diplomatic negotiations. International organizations, human rights groups, and legal experts have also weighed in, underscoring that any attempt to transfer or seize territory without the free and informed consent of its inhabitants would violate core norms of international law. They argue that beyond geopolitical and strategic interests, the rights of indigenous populations must remain central in any discussion about territorial governance. As tensions escalate, there are warnings that the dispute could have long-lasting consequences, not just for U.S. relations with Europe, but for global diplomacy at large. Should economic coercion become normalized as a tool for extracting territorial concessions, the international order could face unprecedented instability. Some European nations have already pledged solidarity with Greenland and Denmark, seeking to shore up multilateral cooperation against unilateral pressure. At the same time, experts highlight the complex mix of interests at play. Greenland sits above massive deposits of rare earth minerals, critical in the production of advanced technologies and renewable energy systems. Climate change is making Arctic routes more navigable and opening new possibilities for commerce and exploration. These economic and environmental trends contribute to the strategic value of the island beyond military considerations, further complicating the geopolitical calculus. But for the people of Greenland, the issue transcends strategic value. Their protests, their political statements, and their demands for respect reflect a universal principle: that the future of a nation or territory must be determined by its own inhabitants. This conflict, therefore, is not just about maps or mineral wealth. It is about dignity, choice, and the right of a people to define their own destiny. As the standoff continues, the world watches closely. Will cooler heads prevail through diplomacy and negotiation? Will economic pressure give way to mutual respect and cooperation? Or will this confrontation permanently alter alliances that have stood for decades? Only time will tell. What is clear, however, is that the Greenland-U.S. tensions are more than a headline. They are a defining moment in international relations, with implications that stretch far beyond one Arctic island.